Sorry?
The YouTube link. Okay, don't worry. It's on the flyer. Don't worry.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Can we share? Are you okay, sir?
I am fine, thanks. Just
Okay, good. What about TBK? She okay?
She will join.
Okay, she will join.
Might just take your time. Don't worry, we'll join. Don't worry.
Okay, no problems. I'll start at when it's 10 o'clock. I'll just start and I'll introduce. Okay, I'll introduce you and then okay. The last end is already here. Okay.
What's machine?
Okay. When it's 10, I'll start.
Can you see her? Can you see her?
I can't see her.
Just click on the video. Click on the video.
Okay.
Video at the upper, you see some icon at the upper start.
Well, good morning to our viewers and participants from all over the world. This is GreaterWorks. This is the 9th installment in the 13-week series. If you recall, last week we talked about new data protection regulation is a church compliant, but today we are moving a bit forward to something very interesting to many parents. We're talking teenagers. And we'll be talking about social media engagement with your teen. As you know, that the teen year, or what I call teenagers, are actually I'll call them special age group, where parents sometimes they get very uneasy because of their peculiarity. However, I'd just like to walk you through what GreaterWorks is. GreaterWorks is an engagement platform for Christian influencers, thought leaders, and strategic thinkers who are passionate about expressing themselves and sharing their thoughts on how the church can shape culture, economically, politically, economically, and socially. And therefore, we bring in people who are, as it were, high rates in their spaces, whether technology, parenting, or whatever, in every sphere of life. Last week we did. We did have Mrs. Biola Lasayinde and Yimika Ketiko. Both are lawyers, and they shared their thoughts on the new data regulation. Is your church compliant? And the fulcrum of our discussion was that it is the right of the data subject, that is you and I, to protect our data, and also the data controllers, which are maybe churches and the ministry, have some limit as to they have some rights as well. That said, we're moving on. On today's GreaterWorks series, it's a pleasure and honor to have Gbenga Sesan. Gbenga Sesan is the Executive Director of Paradigm Initiative, a Pan-African social enterprise working on digital inclusion and digital rights through its offices in Ghana, Cameroon, Nigeria, Tanzania, and Zambia. Is a non-resident fellow at the Digital Civil Society Lab at Stanford University. And prior to starting Paradigm Initiative, Gbenga led Lagos Digital Village, a joint project of junior achievement of Nigeria, Microsoft, and Lagos State government. Originally trained as an electric engineer at Obafemi Awolowo University, he completed executive education programs at Lagos Business School, New York Group for Technology Transfer, Oxford University, Harvard University, Stanford University, Santa Clara University, and the list is extremely long. He's a Archbishop Desmond Tutu Leadership Fellow, Ashoko Fellow. He's on committees on harmonization of information technology, telecommunications, and broadcasting sectors, and also a roadmap for the achievement of accelerated universal broadband infrastructure and services provision. He's been listed by CNN as one of the top 10 African tech voices on Twitter. Gbenga is happily married to Temilade Sesan, and a PhD and expert on energy poverty and development. You're welcome, Mr. Gbenga Sesan.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure, sir. And we also have Mrs. Victoria Oluwaniyi. She's a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria and a member of the Society of Women Accountants of Nigeria. She's also a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria and an alumnus of China Europe International Business School, one of the top 5 business schools in the world. Oluwaniyi is a serial entrepreneur. She's run so many businesses, especially which spans oil and gas and basic distribution. Prior to this, she's worked with Noble Drilling Nigeria Limited, the West African division of Noble Corporation, Houston, Texas, as the assistant controller of finance for the division. Mrs. Victoria Oluwaniyi, you're welcome to GreaterWorks. Okay, it's actually a pleasure to have both of them. I'm going to be calling them Mrs. Auntie Vicky. But let me just ask Mr. Gbenga Sesan. I want to just give me an impression of your, because when I was going through your profile, I do understand that you actually won a competition in your team, a technology competition in your team. I want to just give me a background to like the team in your own days and the teenagers we have there now. Can you just give us like a background?
Okay, so I mean, I won that competition at 23, so I wasn't exactly 18, but of course the foundations the foundation that was laid clearly, when I was a teenager is clearly responsible for that. And I'm not a fan of comparing the good old days with now, and the reason is very obvious, because the tool and the exposure that generation is very different, but very clearly right now we have a lot more opportunities in terms of the internet, which of course didn't exist when I was a teenager. But I think one very clear thing that I must say is that two key things that are very relevant then and now. Number one is drive. And when I say drive, I mean that you must be driven. You cannot afford to be mediocre, to be like the rest and wait for people to tell you what to do. You move from year 1 to year 2, year 3, and you just cram past and forget and continue. But you have to be driven. There has to be a sense of being for you as a team. And I think the second thing is also to expose yourself to as much knowledge that can take you in the direction of your dreams. That can be through friends, it can be through mentors that you approach, but it's very critical that in addition to drive, you also make sure that you subject yourself to a lot of exposure that can take you in a direction that you would like to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I'd just like also to ask Mrs. Oluwaniyi. Mrs. Oluwaniyi, can you hear me, ma'am? Okay. Let me.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
But I can't hear you.
Well, can you hear me now, ma'am? Can you hear me now?
I have not slept.
Is it okay now, ma'am? Can you hear me?
I haven't slept.
No.
I'm just about my work, getting this work and getting this work.
Okay. So let me just, I think Mrs. Oluwaniyi is having some challenges at the moment. Let me just ask you.
All right.
Teenagers.
Your wife prayer life is putting me on the run.
Sorry about the distraction. The thing here is very, very problematic, if you want to put it that way. But research has shown that the brain of the young person is not really so adverse, and so sometimes they tend to be clumsy. They tend to behave would like to say, immaturely, which is actually expected. But I also think that parents sometimes put too much pressure on them because they expect them, for example, when you enter your teen's room, you expect her her bed to be made up, you expect her to lace her shoes properly. But research has shown that their brain is not really well formed until they get to their 20s. But parents do put a lot of pressure on them. What do you say to this, sir?
So that as a parent of 2 kids myself, a 5-year-old who actually is a piano practice.
What are their ages?
That's him, and a 2-year-old, 5 and 2.
Okay.
And so I can understand as a child who then becomes a parent, I can understand why parents are tempted to expect perfection from teenagers and from kids generally. And the reason for that is because don't forget, when you were in primary 1 and they told you, or when you were in elementary school, when they told you at some point that 1 minus 2 was impossible, you understood it was impossible. And then you got to primary 6 or you got to JS1, realize that 1 minus 2 was minus 1. It was no longer impossible. At that point that you have learned that it is no longer, it's no longer impossible, you honestly forget the stage where it was impossible for you. So if they ask you 1 minus 2, instinctively you say minus 1. Now, if somebody says impossible, you can't relate with what they're saying. You're like, why are you so dumb? It's minus 1. Now, that's what happens to parents. We're now mature and we project our maturity on the children and expect them to be as mature as we are. And by the way, this is what every parent, including myself, this is what we go through. We need to constantly remind ourselves that these are children. I mean, I told you my son is 5, right? For a 5-year-old, at times I expect too much from him. So he's at piano practice right now, and so if you hear any piano in the background, that's my son. But and he has these pieces to play and all that. And when he moves away from playing and wants to play and just be a 5-year-old, at times I'm like, stop it, be serious. And the reason for that is because I'm at 1 minus 2 is minus 1 stage. He wants to be at 1 minus was impossible. And I think it's very important for us to remember that as parents, these are kids. When they become teenagers, we need to put ourselves in our shoes. When we were teenagers, don't forget, the teenage years are the years that you literally fight to find an identity. That's when you fight to define your core values. As a teenager, I was exposed to a lot, and that was when I decided the path for my life. Either I knew it or I wrote it down or not. That was the time. So when we see and listen to teenagers, we need to and the 2 things that obviously help, even with my 5-year-old, one is empathy. Putting yourself in his shoes and realizing, honestly, at 5, I didn't play 1 chord of the piano, and so I should appreciate what this guy is doing right now. And I think, secondly, is also there's a level of interaction you can't have with a 5-year-old, but that he sees and appreciates that at least daddy is listening. Okay, and even much more for teenagers. I mean, I've never had a teenager, but when I talk to teenagers, in counseling or in training, I realized that even listening to them and admitting and acknowledging their existence gives them a lot of boost and helps them to listen a lot more. So I think we need a lot of empathy. I mean, ironically, this is not something of course we should be telling parents, because parents should know, but at times we're too busy fighting to take to that we almost allow them to be children. And like I said, this is something that we just have to continue learning, at various levels.
Thank you very much. Miss Oluwaniyi. Miss Oluwaniyi.
Yes, please. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, loud and clear. Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you very much. Now, I just asked Mr. Sesan some question, but I'm going to just ask you another way. I'm talking about parents. I'm expecting too much from their team. But the way I'm going to ask you is this: What do you he said something while responding. He said most teenagers, they tend to want to find their identity during the teen years, 10 years. However, I want to just ask you, parents don't find it very easy, because in finding their identity, to some extent, they tend to be rebellious. They flash your rules. Some of the, you can't really now tell them sit down, get up, go there. No, they can push back. So how do you think parents can actually navigate this terrain between 13 and 17?
Thank you very much. I always say that skyscrapers are not built in a day. You don't prophesy. You don't prophesy a building to just show up. Every relationship must be built, must be worked at, must be we must be intentional about it. Now, everything starts from when the child is young. As long as you can have a good, close relationship with your child from when they are growing up, it will help you in their teenage years. There's a scripture that says faith comes by hearing and hearing the word of God. What you hear all the time as a child sometimes haunts you and harms you everywhere you go. We're from a home, as in the church, where some words, some values have been put into us. So even when it comes to that age of, I want to do my thing myself, because one major problem with teenagers is identity crisis. I want to take my decisions. I want to do all that because of what they have heard from when they are younger, and the relationship you have built with them from when they were younger till that particular time. It will help them. Most of the time, they will remember, and they won't. Even though they want to be rebellious, kind of, they will still know that no, I can't cross this boundary, because there's this values, there's this instruction, there's this activities that we have had together when we were younger, and so they kind of go back to it and they remember it. So I think that will help them, so that we as parents don't just react to them. We need to at all times respond to them as appropriate. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, sir. I can hear you, ma'am.
Okay, so we need to be very careful. We need to be deliberate. We need to be intentional with our expectations with these teenagers. So if we have already cultivated a habit of spending appropriate time with them before now, it won't be difficult to win them over again, even at this stage of their life that they get into as teenagers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come to Mr. Sesan. Now, let's talk social media a little bit. I know you're a techpreneur. The way teenagers use social media and the internet, as an addendum rather. The point is, studies have shown that 95% of teenagers have access to a smartphone, and they're on Snapchat, they're on Instagram, they're on lots of them. A few number of them are on Facebook. I want to ask, their engagement with the social media, they tend to spend more time with the social media than they even spend with their family. How can parents help them?
So a few things that I've seen as a parent and also as a mentor to teenagers is, number one, you need to understand what you want to discover anyway. You do not understand the platforms they're on, and you do not know how those platforms work, it is impossible for you to have conversations about those platforms with them. So I think it's important for parents to understand that this is the digital era. You have no choice. You have to at least understand. And I'm not saying that every parent should know, should have a TikTok account. I mean, I do. For obvious reasons, regardless of how fringe the platform is, I have accounts, not only because I want to protect my digital identity, but also because I want to understand and be on the cutting edge of what's going on. But for me, it's my work, it's research, right? But parents must understand these platforms, because if you don't understand the platforms, the second thing will be impossible. The second thing is you use those platforms. When I say both of them from others must not be the only method that guides them through these platforms. It's a typical parenting skill that you have, right? Communicating with them, things with them. When it's time to talk about sex, you talk about sex with them, and you don't allow them to go and hear about sex from outside from their friends who have a perverse understanding of sex. It's the same thing with social media. You have to have that conversation with them. By the way, there's a reason why 13 is the minimum age for most social media platforms. It's because that is the age of digital consent. Now, don't forget, the age of digital consent is much less than the age of physical consent. The age of physical consent is 18 or 21, depending on the country you're in. But the age of digital consent is 13. That's the point where you can click and say, I approve that my data can be collected. I approve that I want to use this platform. So I think it's important for parents, number one, to understand these platforms. Number two, to once in a while use these platforms with them. And number three is to help them define an agenda for why they're on that social media platform. One of the things that I've learned, not just for teenagers but also for adults, is that many people get on platforms because they're cool and they're because it's cool and because you will be swept away with the flood of everything that happens there. But if you are on that platform for a purpose, if you're there to, of course, entertainment is part of it. But if you're there because you want to learn, if you're there because you want to share information, it becomes a lot more useful for you. People say things like, oh, Twitter is toxic. Twitter is an misunderstood place, blah, blah, blah. I'm on Twitter. I use Twitter effectively, and I will not get off Twitter because people are saying, oh, it's a bad place. People are only talking about bad things there. Because my approach and my use is very different. So I think these are the three key things. Number one is parents must understand these platforms. Guess what? The kids understand it already. You don't have to teach them. They understand it already. The second is you need to use it with them. It's like watching TV. There's parental control and all that, but even with parental controls, there are still TV programs that you need to discuss with your kids. You need to sit with them and explain to them, because their worldview is narrow. Their worldview is limited by what they've been exposed to. You understand? You see, suddenly there's a whole talk about George Floyd around the world, and your son, who is in Nigeria, comes to you and says, or your daughter says, "Oh, mommy or daddy, why is everyone talking about George Floyd and things like that?" You need to understand the issues to discuss with them. And I think even more importantly is the fact that you have to take advantage of the opportunity you have as a parent to guide them good and not bad. And of course, they must be readily available for the moments when they make mistakes, they do the wrong things, to walk them through it and make them realize that this is the reason why you should choose A over B. And by the way, for many social media platforms, if the first thing I said, which is understand the platform, if you've already done that, then you will know there are many ways that you can actually manage those platforms with your kids so that they don't misuse it. One of the interesting conversations I had recently was with one of the global, and they were asking questions from some how to develop a new platform between the ages of 6 and 13. So now we're still talking about social media and 13-year-olds. Very soon, we will talk about social media platforms for the 6-year-old to the 12-year-old. And at that point, we had conversations about privacy and other things that people need to know. But I'll repeat again, 3 important things. Number 1, know the platforms you're on. You cannot say, I am old school, I don't understand social media. I'm not saying use it. In fact, my suspicion is that if you have a global career, there's no way in the world you're not going to use social media in your work at some point. So number one, understand the platform. Number two, use it with them. Have conversations with them. Let them be able to trust you to come ask questions and say, oh, Daddy, I saw this on Twitter. I saw this on Snapchat. I saw this. Come and see it. Or, Mommy, what do you think about this? And the third is guide them through how to use those platforms for good. If you've used it yourself for good purposes, it's going to be a very simple with my son or my daughter about social media because I use it and I can show them how I've used it and how it has improved my life and also improved theirs.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very grateful. Let me come to Mr. Oluwaniyi. Now, while Gbenga was talking, he was talking about how parents should actually lead the charge, and research has also shown that when parents lead the charge, teenagers tend to become more responsible. They use the social media more responsibly. I'd like to come to you. Many parents tend to be passive in their use of social media. How can they do that? I mean, how do you think a normal parent, because some of them will tell them, I don't know, I don't have a Snapchat account, I don't even know what Snapchat is, I don't know what Instagram is, I don't know what Facebook is. So how do you think parents who do not have that kind of, let's say, large heart to learn, how can they still ensure that their children behave responsibly on the social media platforms? Okay.
In fact, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. It's advisable that parents should be interested in what their children do. And this does not start, like I said, everything about life starts from the beginning. You can't just come midway or mid-road and want to start trying or do ensure making your children do what you want them to do in the middle of the road. Everything in life has stages. Now, if as a parent you have developed a relationship with your children, it will be easy for you, even though you don't know everything. I know that in this day and age, we grew up in a different age. They are growing up in a different environment right now. And not all parents know all these social media platforms. Not all. We can't even know all. See, if we want to be realistic, depending on the kind of work we do and the rest, we can't do all, but at least we have a general or a general information about what is going on. But one major thing is this: if you keep your teenagers engaged, if you get involved in what they do, you will find it easy to relate with them. They may be on a particular social media platform that you are not there, you don't even know about it, but somehow when you create that relationship with your children such that if they see anything, they are free to come to you. You won't judge them, you won't preempt them, you won't be like an ostrich in their lives. And how do I mean? Some parents, you can be an ostrich in two ways. It's either you leave them to themselves, it is your own life, just do whatever you like, or you begin to prognose into their life, and everything they are doing you want to see. If you don't do that, and you are responsible, and you are you love them, they see that you truly care, they themselves will come to you. I will give an example of my son. For me, I don't pry into their lives, but about 3 weeks ago he called me and said, Mommy, you are not even following my a particular social media. And I'm like, okay, so you want me to follow you now? And then I decided to start following. It's we shouldn't be an ostrich. We shouldn't um um give them the free way to do what they want to do, but guided. We cannot do everything for them, but we can guide them, we can encourage them, we can be intentional in how we will help them to guide them into what they want to do. Like you said, when teenagers are with their parents, in the issue of social media, they tend to be responsible in the use of it. So the reality is that we parents, we have to also come up, learn about these things, and then also help them to, when they have questions, for instance, or they come to you with things that they see, or you can even hear that some children do certain things, and some people come to report to you that this is what your child has done, blah 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 blah. Instead of you giving the child or the rest, give them room. Give them room to explain. Don't just judge them. Don't just scream at them. All we need in the parents of this age, of this time, is for us to guide them. Recently, in during this lockdown in our church where I serve, we decided to create a forum for the teenagers, and I realized that I'm doing more work behind the scene. Some teenagers don't know how to respond to certain things on that platform, and you will see me going back, privately to chat them up, to teach them, and then you see them coming back to apologize on their own on the platform to say, oh, I'm sorry, I withdraw that statement, things like that. So it's very true that parents help in making them to use the social media in a very productive manner. And the fact is that we parents, we need to engage them and be intentional in what we do, especially with these teenagers, so that we don't lose them totally. Let them be free to come to you. Let them be free that when they are here and they come to tell you things, or you hear things about them, you don't judge them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lance. I'd like to come to Gbenga. Now, while Ms. Oluwaniyi was talking, she was saying parents are not supposed to be ostriches. In other words, they don't necessarily have to be in the faces of their teenagers. But while you're also talking, you said there are parental control, that is like DSTV, where you can have parental control. Can you walk us through some of those, why you can actually monitor them without necessarily being in their faces? Why you can monitor what they do. For example, the issue of some do sexting, cyberbullying, so is there any way do you have tools that parents can actually learn to actually know how to monitor them, what they do, on the social media? Can you walk us through step by step? There might need the application that you can use. Can you just walk us through those applications? Thank you.
My pleasure. So, some of those things are lifelong conversations that you've started. So I gave you an example earlier. My daughter is 2, but even now she's beginning to read. And one of the books that we've read with her is titled "Don't Touch Me There." Now, because we have read that now, when she's 5, we can have a conversation about, cyberbullying, about harassment, about things like that. And when she gets on an online platform, it becomes easier. I don't have to monitor. I don't have to control and say, let me see, bring your phone, let me see before you use it. When I was talking about parental controls, I was focusing a lot more on the new platforms that are now focusing on between 6 and 12. In fact, for those platforms, the kids cannot use anything without a parent's giving approval. But once a child is 13 and they have a smartphone, you cannot be a hawk. You can't monitor everything that they're doing. The reality is that at that point, you know how they say, I'll say it in Yoruba and I will translate, right? It is what a bird eats that sustains it in flight. At that point, the one thing that can see them through after the platform are the conversations with them, how you have modeled the use of technology with them, and how you have, of course, become a model to them generally in life. So at that point, what you can guide them through is not exactly parental controls of how to make sure they don't do things, but show them on those platforms security settings. So for example, if a child uses a virtual call platform, you will show them that your camera does not always have to be on. Because one of the problems we have during this lockdown is the fact that because we're now all at home, working from home, school home and things like that, there are many conversations that kids are beginning to have with their friends. And if it's happening on a mobile device, it becomes very easy for that child to take that mobile device and maybe run all over the house and literally give his or her friends a virtual tour of your house for free. Now, that isn't safe for many reasons. The same way you will not allow a stranger into your home and show them all of the rooms, your bedroom, your bathroom, and everything, your study, the same way you won't do that for for strangers, the same way you shouldn't do that online. One of the lessons parents must also teach their children is online courtesy. You give what you expect, because many times we talk about cyberbullying as if it is only only our kids that get bullied. Guess what? That cyberbullying happens among teenagers because some other kids are bullied. Those kids that are bullying also have parents. Many of those parents complain also about cyberbullying. We need our kids to give courtesy as they expect it. But apart from that, we need to also let them realize that when you get, and I think this is a critical one, in online environments, everybody is not who they say they are. Not everybody is who they say they are. It is possible for you to be on Facebook, have a friend who has common friends with you, and realize many years later that that person is not who they say they are. And I can give many examples. One of the popular examples, there are two popular examples that I usually give to people. There's one called Royal Amebo that was on Twitter many years ago. This guy pretended to be a lady, befriended many people, and unfortunately got money from them, got a lot of emotional investment. And when people were about to find out, she somehow got someone to say that she had died. And of course, we found out later after some investigation. And the other was on Facebook. A guy who used to work for the president. I don't want to mention his name, but I've written a lot about this. He worked for the president as a social media assistant. He created a name, Wendell Simlin, and he used it to interact with people, to create new friends, and at some point even used it to try to implicate the CBN governor at the time, SLS, as the sponsor of Boko Haram and things like that. Of course, I did some research and I found out who the real person was from some forensic work and things like that. But the point is, parents must allow their kids to understand that bullying is a two-way street. There are times when there are kids that give the bullying. It should not be your child. If it is your child at the receiving end of the bullying, you need to have some, conversations with them and let them know if someone has terrible behavior online, they can easily disconnect from such people. If anybody, after they've disconnected from them, still tries to get in touch, there are many tools like blocking, like muting, that can help them. Make sure that you work with them to create a safe environment. And I think at the top of all this is to let them realize that what they see online may not always be what it seems. I'm sure people have seen the picture of the guy who used his toilet seat and a paperwork to take a picture that looked like it was in an airplane flying. And so there are many scenarios like that where what you see is not what you get online, and it's important for. So, like I said, for those below 13, of course, you need to institute parental controls. But for those who are 13, who have the legal right to sign up, the conversations you've had with them, interactions, the modeling, because and everybody knows this, our kids do the things we do. Our kids kind of make us the yardstick, and if we do something, my 5-year-old sees me doing something and says, "Daddy, you said I should go up to sleep," and I go to sleep, and I saw you going downstairs and you were not sleeping at that time. And we have to have a conversation. You sleep at 7:30. As an adult, I can't sleep at 7:30. And then we had that conversation. So modeling is important. And it's the same thing online. It is not about playing the hawk and hanging around them and trying to secretly follow them around various platforms. Because if you do, they will go dark. And when they go dark, it will be worse.
Thank you. I'm going to stay with you, Gbenga. I'm going to stay with you on that. Now, when you were talking, in passing, you actually said that the age, probably many of these social media platforms, the recommended age is actually 13 years. But I also think that from experience, children are different. There are those who are 10 who are as mature as a 15-year-old, and there are those who are 15 who are not as mature as a 20-year-old. So I'd like to ask you, what do you think should be the parental prerogative? I mean, when they should actually allow their children to go use the social media? Is it going to be 13 as recommended or prescribed? So I want to know, is it going to be a situation where the parent actually think that, although my son is 13, but I don't think he's mature enough to handle the social media. I rather wait till about 15. So what do you say to that?
So every leader knows them. one of the best ways to convince people to do something is to make them believe they made decisions by themselves. And so I think it's important not to say you are not ready, but to allow them to come to the conclusion that they are not ready. And there are many ways to do this. The 13-year rule is not universal. Like you said, there are many 13-year-olds that have the cognitive abilities of 31-year-olds. And there are many 31-year-olds on Twitter today who you read what they write and see how they behave, and you can tell that they are still stuck in their GS1 in secondary school, in their thinking and their behavior. So you need to domesticate that conversation in your own home when they are young. I mean, when they're 5, when they're 2, the kind of books you expose them to, the kind of jokes that you play, the kind of things you allow them to see are the things that lay the foundation you have with them when they're 10. My son says to me, "Oh, I need my own phone." He's 5. And I say to him, you can't have your own phone now. And because it's 5, it's easy for us to have a conversation and explain to him using the characters in his book to convince him that he's not ready for it. But once it's closer to the age of 9 and 10 and 11, and don't forget, that's where peer pressure sets in. And he sees all his friends have smartphones. The way to test whether you are somebody is this. If your son or your daughter come back home and say, all my friends have phones, I want one. Now, there may be trouble. But if they come back home and they're laughing and saying things like, oh, all my friends have phones, Daddy, is it that their parents have not told them that they are not ready? Then you can tell that the conversations you've had, the modeling you've done has worked. And by the way, this is not cast in stone. It doesn't mean that when they are now suddenly 11, you now say, okay, when you are 13, you are going to get a smartphone. But my point is, from when they are toddlers, the kind of toys we get for our children. For example, when we gave birth to our first child, my son, we deliberately decided not to get him the typical boy toys. You know, people will wonder, why are you getting him Aisha that is a doll? Or are you trying to make... Listen, the things you model are the things that determine what they want to do when they grow up. We chose not to get him things that could get him towards violence, but to expose him to the entire gamut of how you play as a child. And I think it's important that we know that these things that we do when they're 2, when they're 5, when they're 8, when they're 11, is what then leaves them to have a conversation with friends when they're 13, and then come and decide, I want my own phone, or put phones under pillows and begin to do things. This conversation does not happen when they are 13. And as I said, it is important to know that 13 is the rule for the platform, not a rule for your home. The privacy policy of your own home does not have to be the same thing with the privacy policy of Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or YouTube. You must define in your own home what the rules are. And these rules, like I said at the first thing I said is every leader knows this. You don't set a rule and say this is the rule for everyone. No, you consult. You make people understand the process and you lead them towards the path of making the decisions. In fact, one of the things they say about leaders is that at some point, leaders can easily manipulate. They can make you do the things that they want you to do and make you think that you were the one that decided to do it. I'm not asking for manipulation. And let us get to a point where they are able to see their friends do these things. And don't forget, the rule is internal must always be greater than external. There will be pressure. There will be pressure from the outside, but the forces on the inside, the values that you subscribe to, the norms that you've agreed on, the things that you've agreed as a home and as a family, that these are the things that we do, and this is why we do them. They must be greater than the forces of peer pressure that your children will face at 10, when all their friends begin to carry phones around and say, I'm on TikTok and I pretended to be 15, but I'm still 10. You can't start when they're 10. You can't start when they're 13. You must start from the day our kids were born. We started reading to them. Of course, even before then, the joke about reading to your wife's stomach so the child, can hear it. And it is not a surprise that at the age of 2, we were looking for my daughter yesterday. It took a few seconds and we were wondering where she was. I went upstairs and I saw her 2 levels up, sitting by herself, holding a book and saying, lion, lion, identifying the lion inside. It is what we train them with that would help us define the kind of conversation we can have with them later and will help with the external pressure.
Yeah, thank you so much. Ms. Oluwaniyi, Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, good. I'm just going to ask you now. I want to talk about role models that our children do have. I mean, teenagers. In their teenage years, they like people. They follow them. As a matter of fact, I think
I
they do
think
have
I must
probably.
have. I think I must have lost you at the point. I'm not following your question. You may start again. I don't know what's happening to the network here.
Okay. Let me start again. Now, ma. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I can hear you now.
Okay, fine. Okay, fantastic. So I'm just going to ask you, the social media is a very powerful tool for influencing the teens. And I'm talking especially our musicians like Davido, Whiskey, and later, and more recently, Naira Marley. How do you think parents can actually, as it were, fend off these influences of the social media? What I'm saying, fend off. How do you think you can protect them? Because the truth of the matter, whether you like it or not, like Gbenga rightly mentioned, they're going to be on the social media. But how do you think parents can actually guard their teens from the influence, from the negative influence of their role models, like Davido, like Naira Marley? I mean, it was a couple of days ago was in the news that he went to Abuja, and I mean, very not a very good story. But these are the role models of our children. So how do you think parents can help their children in this terrain?
I will tell you that we are talking about Naira Marley. You talk about the video. We also have some fantastic people out there. So we shouldn't just look at social media as a bad tool or something that makes you to look at bad things or things that are not really edifying. Social media on its own is a neutral tool. It depends on how we deploy it, how we use it. Now, one major thing is that for every family and every family setting, you should have you should have a set of values that you push out there. Like I said earlier, you can't be in CBCC, for instance, and some words will not keep haunting you. You will win by righteousness, integrity, excellence, purpose. All those things we continue to haunt you one way or the other. That you will begin to see that there's some things you can't just do, and that is why we say you don't legislate behavior. You don't legislate how a child should be. You develop, you cultivate, you have talks. In life, we have to keep on talking and talking with these children. For instance, if we look at the word of God, Joseph was 17 years when he left the house and never returned to that house. And the things that saw him through in the land of Egypt where he was all that he had learned from when he was home. Interestingly, my own children left the house also at 17. Now they are there. And I used to tell them then, look, this is what happened to Joseph. And look at all the things that happened to him along the line. A lot of distractions. Even there was no social media, but there was sex, tempting. There was he could steal from his master, and he could be wicked to his master. But no, he didn't do that. He maintained his integrity all through his lifetime before he even became a prime minister in Egypt. Now, yes, there are a lot of things on social media, but it is how we use it. What have you trained your children with? What values have you put in them? In my house in those days when they were young, there's some cartoons they cannot watch. We sit down to watch cartoons together. If a parent does that, and as you are watching it, you are asking them questions. What do you think? What do you think? And they give you an answer. You'll be able to say that, okay, fine, you've done your bit. I'm not trying to put put or legislate anything for anyone, but like in my house at that time when they were young, when you put Scooby-Doo, my children will say, no, I'm not watching Scooby-Doo because I don't like what I'm seeing in Scooby-Doo, for instance, and they don't watch it. So the same thing, if they put if they put something wrong or something that does not match your value in front of you, you won't buy it, you won't like it, you may watch it quite all right. There's lots of things that come to your phone unsolicited anyway, and you watch it to see it, but does not mean that it will affect who you are. So the major thing every time is that we as parents, we need to continue to communicate our family values, what we believe, and leave that thing as well in their faces, that our children will know that, okay, this, my mommy says this, my daddy says this, and he does it. That is also very key. And let's now assume that, oh, they want to do it. Because there was a time that we had to, one of my children said he wants to go for a concert. And my husband was like, yeah, let them go. Let's go. When he went there, there was a Davido concert some years back. When he went there, he himself came and said, I don't like it. No. That's not what I expected. They see something else, and by the time they get on social media, by the time they get to that place, they realize that they're not one, they can't even cope. So as parents, we need to continually communicate. We need to continually talk and also live that life, in front of them. They say they like something, they follow something. When you like what you get value from, you follow what you get value from. So your children will follow you when they see what you do. When you have certain situations on ground, and this is the way you approach it, they look at it, they learn from that. So even though there are a lot of vices there on social media, that our children are exposed to, but what is built in them is what is going to see them through in this age that we are in. And that is why we cannot stop talking. We cannot stop talking, not just talking nonsense, but talking values, talking the word, and living that word in their faces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask any of the audience. I just want to go to the audience very briefly before I come to Gbenga. I just want to ask the audience, if you have any question, can you just signify by raising your hand? If you have any question for Gbenga, for either Gbenga or Oluwaniyi, can you just raise your hand? I just want to see you. I would like to see if you're there. If you have any question at all that you want to ask Gbenga or Ms. Oluwaniyi, you can signify by raising your hands.
We're going through that trajectory of really grace, and young people are protesting and really angry, saying that we need to.
Sorry. Who are you? Who are you, ma? I don't know who is talking.
So yes, that's the thinking around sustainability. Very long term thinking. It's about the future. You think about the context now. What's the impact of this plastic in the ocean? The idea of microplastics. So scientists have started to show that plastics are breaking down tiny
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, can you just ask your question?
Yes, I can hear you. I wanted to ask Mr. Gbenga a question.
Okay, can you
a question?
Okay, fantastic. But there's something.
Yeah. Mr. Gbenga, it's a pleasure to have you on the platform today.
Thank you, sir.
When you were listing the things you should note when dealing as far as the social platform medias that our teenagers interact with, you talk about you knowing it yourself, you using it with them. I think I missed the third one. You mentioned 3, but I could actually itemize 2.
Okay, thankfully I remember. The first one is knowing it yourself. Second is using with them, and the third is guiding them to understand the purpose of the use of that platform, because people use platforms for various reasons. Some of the platforms are for obvious reasons. So LinkedIn is a career platform, but some others like Facebook and Twitter are used differently by different people. So it is important for you to work with them to guide how to use it. I use Twitter in my work to communicate the work we do, to have conversations, and to attract resources and partners. Some other people use it just, for fun and nothing else. I use it for fun and for those things. So it's important to guide them what they can use. They can use Twitter to connect with mentors, with opportunities. They can use Twitter to search for information. I mean, as things they are at the point where they're considering, their first fellowship opportunity, first internship opportunities, or even maybe not the first. At that point, those are the things that you use those platforms for, and you can connect them. The basic idea is A plus B equals C. A is the teenager, B is the platform, C is their desired destination in life. The teenager uses the platform to get to their desired destination in life.
Wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Akyode. Do you have any other question before I ask the last question?
Well, I'm still listening attentively. If there's any, I'll raise my hand.
Okay. Somebody said, Mr. Oyebola said, we need to revisit our, just some of the comments on the chat here. Mr. Oyebola said that we need to revisit our societal values by giving our children a strong foundation to build on. Parents must prepare their words as they grow up, which will help them make good decisions. And also, Vincent said, okay, and there is also Omotola Ahamioji. He said, we thank the speakers. My question is, we have situations, I hope Mr. Gbenga Sesan and Ms. Oluwaniyi are listening. So we thank the speakers. My question is thus. We have situations where parents have missed it while the children were growing up. Now in their children's teenage years, could you advise how this can be corrected? I think Mrs. Oluwaniyi should go first, then I'll come to Gbenga.
I hope I'm not. Okay. Okay. First of all, we're children of God, and there's no situation that is difficult for God. We need to continue to pray. We can't stop praying for these children, and we can't stop talking. We can't stop praying. We can't stop talking. Yes, it looks like they have missed it, but God has a way of bringing us back to where He wants us to be, because He has a purpose for everyone. And like we said, your values are already there. That you yourself also live. Let the children see you, that you are changing certain things. Let the children see you too. Yes, you know that you have missed it. If you come and tell them, look, I've done something wrong. I think I'm not right in this area. I think I've just own up. They will also see that as well. But the truth is that we cannot stop praying for these children. Yes, it seems that they have missed it, but at the same time, God has a purpose for them, and we cannot. They will fulfill that purpose, and we shouldn't be afraid. We shouldn't be worried. God is there. He will not allow them to fail, and He will not allow us to fail. As long as we ourselves have decided to live right, we begin to see it translate in the lives of our children as well, by His grace. So that is what I would say on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma. I think I will just before I come to Gbenga, I'll come to Bukola Fadulu because of our time. Bukola Fadulu, can you ask your question? Bukola Fadulu. Okay, I can.
Okay, she can't hear the audio. She's not trying to refresh her page.
Okay. Maybe she's having some challenges. But let's. I hope Gbenga, can you just respond to that? If you are missing of the parents while your children are growing up, is there any remedy?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So it's not even just around the issues of social media and all that. There's always, I mean, there's a reason we talk about remedy. Remedy is a fact of life. I think that a few things. So I do a lot of training with young people, and the people I work with are people who typically did not have a lot of parental intervention growing up. And I think that two elements that help a lot. Number one is modeling, showing them the alternative. So this is what they have learned. Show them the alternative. What is the alternative? What will they get into? I mean, what will where the path they are on? Where will they land them? And then what is the alternative to be able to talk about course correction? But the second, and I think even the more important one, is positive peer pressure. Now, if and I saw this happen in secondary school, and I had no idea what was going on. A parent brought a child to our school, Federal Government College, Oluwaniyi then, and said, a teacher just called me and said, "Oh, one parent wants to see you," and then said, "This guy is now your friend. Make sure he becomes as brilliant as you. Make sure he becomes a good boy like you." I had no idea what was going on, but guess what? It worked to a certain extent. Now, this is the same thing that I do in my work. I allow young people who we think are going on the wrong path to become friends with young people who are on the right path. And when they see the pressure, when they feel the pressure of good, just the same way they succumb to negative peer pressure, I have seen young people succumb to positive peer pressure. So we need to model, connect them with the alternative path and show them what's possible. It could be through reading, it could be through showing them role models that they can connect with. It could even be using the same platforms they're on to allow them to show them on the same platforms the people that have taken different paths and where they end up, and positive peer pressure.
Thank you very much. We're very grateful. Before we round off, let me just read out some of our, like a summary of what our discussion. Number one is that teenage year is a time for establishing your identity. That is very teenage. That's where teenagers establish their identity. Number two is that parents need to understand the platforms their children are on. Number three is that they used to use the social media with them, but the parents need to use the social media platforms with them and guide them to understand the purpose. Number four is parents should be interested in what interests their teens. Number five, a parent must continue to have a continuous conversation and engagement with their teenagers. Number six, the society, the social media is not bad in itself, it's the way we use them. And number seven is parents must continue to communicate their family values to their children or their parents or their teens. And number eight, modeling is very important in influencing the teenagers. Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Gbenga Sesan for coming on GreaterWorks, and also Mrs. Victoria Oluwaniyi. And I'd like to also recognize so many other people who came. Bukola Oyetimehin, Akinkunle, Akiode, Tat, and I guess that's her name on social media. Omotola Ahimioje, Gbenga, Omotosho, Muyosori Idowu, Olawale Oweye, Abiola Lasende, Olugbenga, Oluwaniyi, Oluwaseun, Olajide. Thank you again, Mr. Gbenga Sesan and Mrs. Victoria Oluwaniyi. It's been nice having you. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward to having you some other times.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
It's a pleasure. Mr. Gbenga, your last word.
My last word is teenagers must be deliberate. So I'm in my study and I can look up and I can see the diaries I've been keeping since 1995 until I stopped using physical diaries. You have to be deliberate. If you don't plan your future, you will get whatever the future offers. But if you plan it, you will get what you want. In those diaries, I wrote my future out. And I'm glad that I'm work in progress, but at least excited and happy to do the things I do right now. If you're a teenager and you get a chance to listen to this, be deliberate. Have all the fun you want to have, be the teenager that you are, but be deliberate. So that tomorrow, when others are complaining and regretting, you can be excited to look back and also look forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sesan. Thank you. So our wonderful participant from all over the world, we're going to draw the curtain here. We look forward to having you next week. God bless you.